Hey friends, so today I'm going to be rating all of the songs written by Syd Barrett. And just in case you don't know, Syd Barrett was the original leader of Pink Floyd, but then was forced out when a number of things around his mental health and behavior made it not practical for him to work with the band anymore. And after that happened, this legend immediately grew up around him that kind of romanticized Syd Barrett as this tortured soul, this psychedelic genius whose mental health contributed to great work. But unfortunately, I think that narrative does a lot of disservice both to people suffering mental health issues by glorifying it as the price to pay for creativity, when I think in Syd Barrett's case quite the opposite, that mental health issues probably cut his prime short, and also it makes it impossible to judge his work on its own merits when it's pretty strong. So when I was a young teenager, I was a big fan of Syd Barrett, and I sort of bought into this romanticized, uh, crazy genius image. But now that I'm a little bit older now, I'm 32, I've re-listened to all the music, and what I was thinking about more was how I know people who, from my own life, who maybe around the same time as Syd. So Syd went through, I think, some of his issues first in his early 20s, and I think about friends of mine who may have suffered mental health problems at that time. And I look back at it and think, and I'm trying to be objective now and just listen to these songs with fresh ears and just judge them for, the creativity that they represent and the songwriting talent. And, I don't want to think about it from the perspective of romanticizing mental illness. So with that, let's start ranking the songs. Okay, so the first songs are these sessions that I don't think saw wide release from about 1965 to 1966. There's four songs from these. So Lucy Leave is probably the best one. The song is okay. It's like it's like a high C tier song. It's okay. It sounds like they started off with a basic garage band roots, and just listening to this, Syd and Pink Floyd just sound like any other rock band from the mid '60s. Double Oboe and Remember Me are a little worse than Lucy Leave. Butterfly has that same sort of garage rock sound, but it's got a little more interesting chromaticism that we'd see later on Piper at the Gates of Dawn and some of the Barrett solo work. So then I think the first major song they record as the Pink Floyd is Candy and a Currant Bun, which is a nice little garage poppy song. The first version of it was about drugs, but then they rewrote it to be about pastries. So yeah, they're already starting to move into a little more avant-garde, transgressive territory there. And that's where the songwriting takes a real jump with Arnold Layne, which is going to be our first S tier song. This song was written about a Cambridge area cross-dresser. Now, I read it as being sympathetic to the Arnold Layne. That's this cross-dresser who is thrown in jail, who goes around the neighborhoods taking women's clothing off lines, wearing it, and then is thrown in jail and put on a chain gang. I can see where someone might read this as making fun of the character, but I think Syd is identifying himself with this person on the margins of society, and I think it's a touching song. It rocks. It's just a really good piece of work. So then they follow that up with See Emily Play, which is another banger. Not quite as good as Arnold Layne, but it has a lot of irregular phrase lengths in it. It has a lot of good sonic textures, some good freaking out. The B-side of See Emily Play is going to be Scarecrow, which is a decent melodic little ditty, which then finds its way onto Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So then we get to the big kahuna. It's 1967, and Pink Floyd is recording Piper at the Gates of Dawn next to the Beatles, recording Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band right in the studio next to them at Abbey Road. And they open it up with a big cosmic jam called Astronomy Domine, which now when I was in high school, this was probably my favorite song. It would definitely be S tier, just because it's got all these overdubbed guitars, these sound effects, this texture. But the older I get, the more I just think it's like a little bit repetitive, and I'd put it high B tier, maybe low A tier. That cover I've got there is actually Ummagumma, which was a post-Syd Pink Floyd release, because Pink Floyd continued pretty successfully for years after Syd Barrett playing his material. And I think it's also worth pointing out that even on the original recording, the contributions of Rick Wright and Roger Waters were pretty good. All right, after that we've got Lucifer Sam, which is, I think, slightly better than Astronomy Domine. Just really pretty cool surf rock song. We love it. And then we get what is the next S tier song for me, Matilda Mother, which a lot of Syd Barrett's songwriting was inspired by nursery rhymes one way or the other. The title Pipe of the Gates of Dawn is taken from something from The Wind in the Willows, I believe. And you can hear in the texts of a lot of his songs the influence of nursery rhymes. But Matilda Mother's a little more interesting than that, because it's a song of a mother telling a tale to a child. So it's really a song that's just as much about the nursery rhyme itself as it is remembering being a child in bed, drifting to sleep with this fantastic imagery. And the music matches that perfectly. The only thing I can quibble about it is there's a really awkward edit in the middle of the song. Okay, next we have the song Flaming, which is like similarly almost like a regression to childhood type song, but I just don't like it nearly as much as Matilda Mother. It's sonically a little bit more awkward. Just not, I'd say like a low B. It might even be a high C for me. Okay. Then, so as you can hear so far, there's a lot of experimental stuff going on so far. We've got songs that are about nursery rhymes, that have chromaticism, irregular phrase lengths, a lot of experimentation. And Syd himself is singing in an English accent, which is really uncommon for the time. So the thing is, when you experiment that much, you need to allow ideas that you might normally throw away to sort of get through the gate. And so sometimes it's hard to maintain quality control when you're willing to explore. And so that was something that I think a lot of the Syd Barrett material from Piper and even later into his solo work suffered from. So we have Power Talk H. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but this song is horrible. It's just making a bunch of mouth noises. You'd have to listen to this to know how tossed off this sound. Now, some other groups at the same time had some comparably terrible work. I'm thinking like The Who had on the album with Happy Jack on it, there was a Keith Moon song that was just making horrible random noise. And I also have to think that the fact that no one else in Pink Floyd at this time, neither Rick Wright nor Roger Waters, David Gilmour wasn't in the picture yet, stepped up to write material or even help Syd, means that the burden was on basically Syd to come up with all that material. Now, Power Talk H is credited to the whole band, but Syd was the leader of the band here, and he gets co-credit for Power Talk H, so we're going to give that D to him, too. Next, we have Interstellar Overdrive, which is like an instrumental version of Astronomy Domine. I could put it above or below. I think of them as being more or less the same sort of song. Very good, cool chromatic riffing, multiple guitars, but repetitive. Not something I listened to all the time, something that was really important to me when I was younger. Then we have The Gnome. The Gnome is better than Flaming. It's again one of these, it's a little nursery rhyme song, but unlike Matilda Mother, where it's about the experience of listening to a nursery rhyme, it's just Syd Barrett telling it sort of a tossed off nursery rhyme. Okay. Chapter 24. This is a terrible song. I don't know, is it worse than Power Talk H? I'm going to say it's better than Power Talk H. So this song to me sounds like the attempt by Syd Barrett to write something like Tomorrow Never Knows. So Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles was John Lennon taking the Tibetan Book of the Dead, taking some words out of it, and then adapting a song with a psychedelic backing track. But if you listen to Anthology, Beatles Anthology, you see that the Beatles worked really hard on the final version of that song. The original versions of the song didn't have the cool drum loop, so they didn't have the same texture. It was a bit slower. So they really worked on that song until they got it to not just be pretentious, but to be awesome. And Chapter 24, it doesn't feel like it saw the same amount of love. And I've got to think that's because Syd didn't have Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo, and George Martin helping him out. I think he was probably getting relatively less collaborative help. And so that's going to be a repeating thing we see here, is that this guy came up with great ideas, but the quality control wasn't always there. Next we have Bike. Bike is maybe better than Arnold Lane. So Bike is the perfect Syd Barrett song. It's exhilarating, it's energetic, but it has a little bit of desperation and instability to it. It's extremely catchy. You should listen to it. Oh, and it ends on a wonderful psychedelic sound collage, which I think was done really well. All right, so that's basically the rise of Syd Barrett. We've seen the successful singles. We've seen Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now, from here on out, it's a little bit downhill for his career. So at this point, there's a tension within the band where it's looking like Syd isn't going to be a viable performing figure, but they think they can still use him for songwriting and have David Gilmour take on the live performance duties. So around this time, while Syd is still nominally with the band and songwriting, sort of distancing himself, some of the more alienated songs come out, and honestly, there's some of the best ones, I think, that he's written. And apologies if the chronology is a little off on this. So I think the next song here would be Apples and Oranges, which is a pretty sweet single. I find myself thinking the melody a lot. That's what I'd like to know on your... Anyway, that song is really good, but it was poorly recorded. It was not a big hit for the band, which I think contributed to a lot of the stress that Syd must have been going through at the time, as you have, at this point, management pressing him for new singles. See Emily Play, Arnold Lane are big successes. The Piper album is a success, at least in the UK. And this guy, you gotta figure, he's like 21 or 22. Life's moving by really quickly. Fame's coming at him. And then I don't even want to speculate about what other, mental health predispositions he might have had, but it was going to be rough. All right, so then Pink Floyd's second album features mostly songs by Roger Waters and Richard Wright, but they have this one song left over from that Syd composed called Jug Band Blues, which is a song about how the literal text of the song seems to be about how Syd is simultaneously a member of the band who's welcome and wanted, but also being pushed aside. And then there's a freak out in the middle that's sort of reminiscent of the part of the Beatles' The Day in the Life. This song, this is a real winner for me. This is near the very top. I think I put it above Matilda Mother, below Arnold Lane. Real S-tier material. Really effective, emotional stuff. Then we have two singles that didn't see the light of day in the 60s. Then were released sometime probably in the last 5 or 6 years. We have Scream Thy Last Scream, which is a low A, and Vegetable Man, which this is probably gonna be my number one. I love Vegetable Man. So Vegetable Man is a song that Barrett wrote about the clothing he was wearing at the time. And if you look through his song library, I think you see a number of songs that are almost seem like they could have been creative writing in assignments that a teacher would give. Like, oh, write a song about something you see in this room. Write a song about what you're wearing. Write just whatever words come to mind. And Vegetable Man was sort of one of those, but it almost has the feeling of a person dissociating, like a person looking at themselves from the third person and not necessarily being pleased with what they see. Uh, and the one line is, I've been looking all over the place for me, and it ain't anywhere. It's really, really dark, powerful stuff, but it's a great song. It sounds really modern. It's catchy. It rocks. It's noisy. Just excellent song. But the Pink Floyd was understandably uncomfortable releasing it as a single, and they even vetoed it from coming out in subsequent compilations until I think years after Syd Barrett died. Uh, oh yeah, so Syd Barrett died in 2006. I hadn't said that already. So at this point, Syd Barrett is cut loose from Pink Floyd, but Pink Floyd's original management thought, wait a minute, none of these people can write songs. The person who knows how to write songs isn't Roger Waters or Richard Wright, or David Gilmour, it's Syd Barrett. So Syd embarks on a solo career around, I think, mid-1968 is when that starts. And he has a lot of material, which I believe was mostly written at the time he was with Pink Floyd. So the first recording sessions take place under different people between 1968 and 1970. Some of them are done by the management, some are done by Roger Waters, some are done by David Gilmour. But the first release by Syd Barrett, I believe, after I think it would be 1968's Jug Band Blues, Apples and Oranges, is going to be Octopus, the single Octopus, backed with Golden Hair. Octopus is a great song, definitely S tier. Probably, maybe above Matilda Mother. It's not an electric psychedelic freakout. It's just a quirky chord progression, acoustic nonsense, Lewis Carroll type song with just a ton of energy, a ton of life to it. We love it. It's S tier. Then that's back with Golden Hair, which is setting of a James Joyce poem to music. I know a lot of fans really like this. For me, it's a mid-B tier. We'll put it above Candy and a Currant Bun and Scarecrow, but below Interstellar Overdrive. So then the album The Madcap Laughs comes out. Terrapin is the lead-off song. I believe this was one of the first ones recorded, probably in 1968. It sounds really good. It's like a song that sounds like something the kind of song Brian Eno might have tried to write on his solo albums, like Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. Just a very mellow. It really has a lot of vibes. Gorgeous song. You can easily imagine someone having a major hit on some soundtrack covering it. This is either going to be a very high B or very low A. I think I'll put it at the top of the B tier above Astronomy Domine. Then we have No Good Trying, which is a wild, wacky song backed by the Cambridge area band The Soft Machine. They're worth checking out too if you haven't heard of them. I think, not sure if I like this more or less than Terrapin. I'm just going to put it as a low A, and then just the two of these float between low A and high B. Next you have Love You, which is sort of a madcap, energetic song, but I don't really care for it too much. We'll put it high C. Then we have No Man's Land, sort of a groovy rocker. It's decent. We'll put it mid B tier. All right. So that's where things start getting serious. We have Dark Globe, which is another one of these very self-aware, self-reflective songs that's utterly devastating but totally unforgettable. If you can listen to it once, you'll listen to it on repeat. This is, I'll put it between Arnold Lane and Jug Band Blues, but oh man, we've got some real strong material in the S tier here. Okay, Here I Go is an interesting song because it's the most generic Barrett song we've seen so far. He doesn't try to do anything special. It sounds like something that could have been written in the 30s or 40s. It's like a jaunty jazzy progression, just very basic. Guy breaks up with girl, but then falls in love with her sister type comic song. But it's really good. So this to me tells me that like when you look at Syd Barrett, like a lot of his talent was just basic songwriting talent. We don't need to go into romanticizing the strangeness of his legend to appreciate this stuff, because his basic chops at doing basic good work were there. So I'm going to put this probably above Scream Thy Last Scream. Next we have Long Gone. This song's kind of a drag. I don't like it very much. I know a lot of fans like it, not me. Okay, then we have a series of 3 songs that were like of varying quality, but the thing that unites them is that Roger Waters and David Gilmour totally phoned in producing them because Barrett was being uncooperative. She Took a Long Cold Look at Me would be like a decent generic-ish song, but it was not recorded very well at all. It features the most interesting thing that happens in it is Barrett turns the page. You audibly hear him turn the page of his lyrics as he strums one note. I like that. That's kind of cool. We'll give it at the bottom of B tier. Then we have Feel. Feel is kind of a dreadful song. It has a weird modulation in it that sounds forced and no energy really to the performance. I'm going to put that low C. Now, If It's In You starts off with this ridiculous false start and has incredibly off-key singing, but I often find myself remembering it in my head, and when I remember it in my head, I hear Syd singing it in tune. I think, oh, that's a really catchy song. And then I put it on, it's like, oh, this was not performed well, but it's catchy. It's like, yes, I'm fair. Yeah, some pretty cool high-pitched warbling. I'm actually going to rank it pretty high just because I think it's a pretty catchy song. I'll put it above Golden Hair. Late Night, some good slide guitar, some good atmosphere, a little thin sounding production-wise. We'll put it above Astronomy Domine and below Terrapin, I think. Okay, so that's the first album. The second album, Barrett, is a little glossier. I think they figured out some way to record it that was a little more professional, but the material's a little bit weaker. So here we're really starting to feel the decline. And a lot of people will try to make this narrative about mental illness, but I'm pretty sure what it was that all the best material had already been used and not a whole lot of new stuff had been written. So Baby Lemonade's a pretty good song. We'll put that below Interstellar Overdrive, above If It's In You. Love Song is extremely tiresome and boring. That's very low C. I'm actually going to put it at the top of D. I don't like this. Dominoes is chilling and but a bit long and repetitive. I think this is a better song than it is recording. So I'll put it high up to reflect how much I think it's a good song, but I don't think it's done in service by the recording. That's a repeated theme we're coming to. Quality control is an issue here with the songwriting, with the production, with the performance, with the song selection. It Is Obvious is not particularly good material. We'll put it above Feel, but below those garage rock entries. The song Rats is pretty groovy and crazy, sort of hard rocking, sort of like an angry version of No Man's Land. I'll put it there with No Man's Land. Maisie is a muddy 12-bar blues mess. I don't really like listening to it. Okay, Effervescing Elephant. The version on the album is sort of slow and has this tuba which I don't really appreciate in these sound effects, so it takes too long. It takes like a whole 2 minutes. But there's a Peel Sessions version, which is 1 minute, which is utterly delightful, just charming. We'll put it pretty high in the beats here. I think Barrett wrote it when he was like 16. Next, we have Waving My Arms in the Air, I Never Lied to You. This is like a high C, low B tier song. It's pretty good. Okay, next we have Wined and Dined. I have the Opel cover for this because I think the Opel version is better. This is definitely an A tier song. It's much like Here I Go in that it's Barrett trying to write a normal song and succeeding wonderfully, handsomely. I'm going to put this at the very top of the A tier. This isn't quite an S tier song, but it's really lovely. Wolfpack, I believe, was Barrett's favorite song on the album, and that's going to be between Baby Lemonade and Effervescing Elephant. Do I have another Effervescing Elephant thing here? Don't know what that's for. Okay, so that's it for Syd Barrett. There's a few attempts to do performances with some local musicians in Cambridge. I think he also goes into the studio briefly in 1974. But this is really, the material that's going to be recorded has been recorded by like sometime mid-1970. But Syd Barrett is alive, and he has this rabid following, which means that basically anything that was recorded by him is going to have a market. Unfortunately, that meant the release of material that I don't think anyone really would have liked, but it has this market automatically just because of the legend of Barrett. Now, one song from these outtakes, so these outtakes were released, I believe, in the late 80s, so we're talking 15 years after his last recording session. Opel is actually a pretty good song. It's sort of like Terrapin in terms of quality and vibe. I'll put it, yeah, it's hard to separate from Terrapin. We'll put it at the very bottom of the A tier. All right, but then there's a bunch of alternate takes, which I'm not going to list here, and a bunch of songs that aren't particularly good. So Dolly Rocker is not a good song. Now, I don't want to, make no mistake here. I don't think the Dolly Rocker not being a good song means Syd Barrett is not a good songwriter. I don't think it means, oh, his mind had fallen apart so much that he couldn't write good music by now. I think what it is that Syd Barrett wrote a ton of songs, was extremely productive and creative from probably 1967 to 1969. And when you do that, you create material that sometimes you do it almost as an exercise. And, oh, can I write a song in 15 minutes? Can I write a song about this room? Can I write a song about something I see there? And Dolly Rocker is not a very good, it's not a very good song, but I don't think it was meant as anything other than just like, oh, I'm writing a song now. I don't think it was intended for release. So that's either very bottom of the C or very top of the D tier. Word song is just Barrett saying words, which, that's not something you do when you're mentally ill. That's something when you do when you're, practicing rapping or trying to come up with something. You just write words down and hope the muse takes over. So, yeah, what we're going to see here, a lot of outtakes that, to me, reflects not so much bad quality control as the creative process being recorded because there was this parasitic management in the late 60s, early 70s that was just trying to get everything they could from Barrett, thinking, some rube will buy it. And, yeah, they will. So Swan Lee is a little more formed. It has it's a Native American sort of story and vibe, but this ain't castles made of sand here. Not quite as good. Birdie Hop, I think Syd was probably describing a bird in the window. Again, legitimate songwriting exercise, but not good material. Let's Split. This one actually seems like it could have been developed into something cool. It's like, here you have really high quality raw material that never got developed. So I'm going to put this sort of at the top of C to reflect. I think that could have been as good as Wined and Dined or Here I Go, but it just didn't happen. Lanky is just some instrumental wanking, more like wanky. We'll put it above Word Song, but below Birdie Hop. Milky Way is also like Let's Split. It should have been developed more, but it's not quite as good as Let's Split. We'll put it below Lucy Leave and Long Gone. I kind of like it more than Lucy Leave and Long Gone. Then lastly, Bob Dylan Blues is a joke that Syd Barrett wrote about Bob Dylan that was later released on a compilation. It is a decent song. Let's put it above the Gnome, but below Scarecrow. All right, that's it. If I made any mistakes with chronology, if I omitted any songs, please be sure to mention that in the comments. I didn't do it on purpose. Thank you very much.